You pay for a drink in Germany, and the register adds a second price. 25 cents land on the receipt after the beverage. Not a surcharge dressed as virtue, a deposit. The can, or the covered single-use bottle, leaves the shop carrying more than liquid. The law has attached cash to the packaging itself. You drink, the product is gone. What remains should be waste. It is not. That empty disposable container still holds a legally created cash value. If it is covered packaging, those 25 cents have not vanished with the water, the cola, the energy drink. They sit in the object like an unpaid invoice. Drop it in a household bin and the claim dies with the throw. Return it and a clerk or a machine turns emptiness back into money. Watch a supermarket foyer at dusk. Bags of rattling plastic, a thud, a printed voucher. Students, drivers, pensioners. Nobody recites an environmental speech. They redeem a price the drink no longer justifies. The voucher is not a loyalty sticker. It is the deposit coming home. This is the contradiction a non-expert feels without a lecture. An object that has finished its only consumer job is still priced. The market for the beverage has closed.
A second market, built by statute, remains open. A nationwide return market in which emptiness is the good. Germany's bottle deposit system is the named machine behind that second price. It does not beg for virtue. It makes throwing the vessel away more expensive than walking it back. It leaves the packaging in a narrow legal sense unfinished. Most places treat the empty bottle as an ending. Germany treats it as an open account. The drink is consumed. The container is not discharged. Value remains on the books until an eligible vessel re-enters the chain. The hook is narrower than a slogan. The 25-cent rule is not a mystical property of glass and plastic. It is a mandate on covered single-use beverage packaging. Everything that follows is how a line on a receipt becomes take-back duty, marking, clearing, and a change in what hands do when the last sip is gone.
The public legend says Germany puts a deposit on bottles, full stop. The legend is useful and wrong. The statutory 25 cents attaches to covered single-use beverage packaging. Reusable bottles live in another economy, with different amounts, washing loops, and crate math. Mix the two and the whole story becomes a folktale about recycling, rather than a story about a price the state forced into an object. The older German answer to packaging waste was not a bottle refund. In 1991, the packaging ordinance built a parallel universe. Producers financed collection, the green dots spread across cardboard and tins, and household bins became an industrial feedstock. That system could move yogurt cups. It could not stop beverage containers from leaking into parks, stations, and roadside grass at a scale that embarrassed a country selling itself as orderly. By the early 2000s, the political fight was no longer about whether packaging had a cost. It was about whether a drink vessel needed a personal price, paid by the last pair of hands that held it. In 2003, a mandatory one-way deposit arrived for certain single-use drinks. Cans vanished from many shelves almost overnight, not because metal became illegal, but because the new obligation made a convenient format suddenly expensive to handle. Shops that had treated empties as someone else's problem discovered they were now in the return business. The Packaging Act later recodified the architecture. The important move was not a slogan. It was the tightening of who must charge, who must take back, and which formats could hide in exemptions. In 2022, the remaining soft escape hatches for many single-use plastic bottles and cans closed. On 1 January 2024, Germany's Environment Agency records a further expansion of the deposit obligation, pulling additional single-use drinks, including dairy beverages in the relevant formats, into the same 25-cent logic. The amount is not a suggestion. It is 25 euro cents on covered one-way packaging, with a consumer refund when an eligible empty comes home, and a nationwide clearing requirement so that the shop that takes back is not stranded by the shop that sold. Reusable packaging never needed that particular number. A beer bottle designed to survive dozens of trips does not become trash after one Saturday. It is an asset in circulation. Its deposit, often 8 or 15 cents depending on the vessel and the trade custom, is a hostage against disappearance, not a statutory twin of the one-way quarter euro. Crates add another hostage. The washer, the filler, the brewery fleet, the wet plastic crate in a cellar, that is a different movie, even when both movies play in the same supermarket aisle. What most visitors miss is the double price on the shelf. One line is the drink. One line is the legal remainder. Tourists pay the remainder, forget the remainder, and leave value in hotel rooms. Locals learn the map of which bottles sing in a reverse vending throat and which glass must go back to a specific brewery loop. The confusion is not a glitch in public relations. It is the legal distinction doing work. Single use is priced to come back once and die into recycling. Reusable is priced to come back and live. The 2024 widening matters because it tests the legend again. Milk does not occupy the same cultural shelf as fizzy water.
Dairy packaging had been treated as a hygienic exception, a food more than a beverage prop. Once the deposit net moves, a refrigerated bottle in a family trolley becomes another open account. Small dairies, private labels, and discounters have to print the right mark, teach the right return, and accept that an empty milk bottle is no longer allowed to be merely smelly trash. Two documents, not a mood, hold the nucleus. The Environment Agency states the mandatory amount, the return duty, the consumer refund, and the clearing requirement. The Deutsche Pfandsystem, the DPG, states the same amount for the one-way system, the registered return process, reimbursement, the machine network, and clearing. Context from the 90s and from 2003 explains why the nucleus exists. It does not replace it. So the historical blind spot is simple. Germany did not sprinkle deposits on every bottle out of national character. It built, over 3 decades, a special market for one-way beverage shells because voluntary collection left too many shells on the ground. The empty disposable bottle retains cash because the statute says the transaction is incomplete until return.
Everything that looks like civic virtue is downstream of that incompleteness. Follow the container and the faces change. At checkout, the cashier is only the first clerk of a longer debt. The filler who bottled the drink is the one who had to put the packaging into the one-way system, register it, and fund the deposit that will later be claimed by strangers. The DPG is not a ministry and not a charity. It is the industry-built operator of the one-way deposit process. The logo, the identification, the path from machine count to money moving between firms that do not otherwise trust each other. Each of them wants something unsentimental. The filler wants to sell liquid without being accused of scattering durable litter and without handing a rival an easier shelf. The discounter wants the aisle to move, the foyer not to stink, the accounting to balance when customers return more than the store sold that week. The corner shop with thin floor space wants the legal exception that limits take-back to what it actually offers, because a kiosk cannot become a municipal dump for every can in the postcode. The DPG wants a closed loop of marks and claims, because a deposit without identification is just a rumor of 25 cents. Then there was a character the statute did not appoint, the collector. In parks, outside clubs, along station bins, people harvest eligible empties the original buyer abandoned. They are reading the same price signal, without a receipt. For them, the bottle is a coin that happens to be cylindrical. Cities argue about bins designed to block a hand, about dignity, about whether a deposit that reduces litter also builds a street-level cash crop. The argument does not change the incentive. If the object is worth €0.25, someone with time poorer than yours will pick it up. A life or death decision in this industry is a quiet one. A dairy after the expansion must decide whether a single-use bottle is still worth the handling chain. A retailer decides how many return points to install before queues form beside the bread. A brand decides whether to stay in one-way PET, migrate toward a reusable pool, or shrink a format so that it sits in a different operational box. None of these choices is a speech about the planet.
Each is a bet on how costly emptiness has become. Motive hides in the unreturned unit. If consumers always brought every eligible shell back, the deposit would be a wash: charged, owed, paid, cleared. The system is built for high return, and German one-way rates are famously high. The residual drama is the fraction that never appears. That fraction is where a legal price fails to complete its circuit, and where every actor silently measures whether participation is a duty, a cost center, or a float. Do not look for a villain with a mustache. Look for a map of who cannot legally refuse the empty. The manufacturer cannot treat the mark as decoration. The seller of covered one-way drinks cannot treat the foyer as optional. The consumer can refuse, and then the cash stays behind. That asymmetry is the psychology. Industry is conscripted. Shoppers are priced.
The decisive machinery is not a speech in Berlin. It is a mark on a label, a duty at a door, a count inside a steel throat, and a ledger that moves money across companies that never met the original buyer. Start with the mark. Covered one-way packaging does not rely on a cashier's memory. It carries the DPG identification, the signet that tells a reverse vending machine this shell is a participant, not a yogurt cup with ambitions. Without registration, the bottle is just plastic. With it, the bottle is a claim. Counterfeits, washed-out labels, imported lookalikes, crushed cans offered twice. Every fraud is an attempt to detach the cash from the object the law priced. The system answers with cameras, security codes, compaction that destroys a second redemption, and a refusal light that feels, to a tired shopper, like a moral judgment, and is only a database saying no. Now the door. Retailer take-back is not a courtesy. Shops that sell the covered one-way drinks must take eligible empties back under the DPG return rules, with the material logic that stops a drugstore from becoming an infinite sink for every format in the Republic. Floor space matters. A small store is not asked to impersonate a regional counting house. A large supermarket is. That split is the first real conflict: convenience for the consumer versus the cost of becoming a public return utility while still trying to sell groceries. Queues at the machines are not folklore. They are the visible tax on the last yard of the obligation. Watch a Saturday in present tense. The foyer fills. A man feeds a bag of water bottles into the opening. The drum turns. Each read is a tiny courtroom. Accepted. Accepted. Rejected. Foreign water. No signet. Wrong polymer. Label torn into anonymity. The machines compact the accepted shells, so they cannot be walked to the next store and sold again as emptiness. A voucher prints. At the till, the 25-cent units come off as if they were currency, because in this aisle, they are. Behind the voucher, the clearing begins. The shop that just paid the customer may not be the shop that collected the deposit at sale. A discounter near a station eats empties all day, many of them sold by a kiosk, a cinema, a rival chain. Without nationwide reconciliation, that discounter would be running a charity. The DPG process exists so that deposits travel. The party that placed packaging on the market funds the refund. The party that accepted the empty is made whole, and the counts from thousands of machines become an industrial settlement rather than a pile of arguments. Reverse vending data is not a gadget. It is the evidence the ledger requires. Reusable packaging is running a parallel war in the same building, and it must not be flattened into the one-way story. A crate of beer bottles is not fed into the one-way signet logic. It is sorted by shape, stained by yeast, returned to a pool, washed at temperature, inspected for chips, refilled. The deposit is a leash so the pool does not evaporate. The constraint is logistics: weight of glass, diesel, water, the discipline of standard necks. When a bartender chooses one way, he is often choosing the end of washing. When a brewery defends reusable, it is defending an asset base that only works if the bottles actually rotate. The 25-cent one-way price was meant, among other things, to stop single use from winning every time by looking cheaper at the till. Whether it revives the crate is a fight that never ends cleanly. Shoppers still grab what is light. Fillers still chase what is fast. The 2024 widening of coverage, already enforced by the time a milk bottle sits beside sparkling water, shows the tension without a parade. Dairy wants refrigeration, cereal dates, and packaging that does not pretend to be a festival can. Return machines want standardized shoulders and readable codes. A family that once dropped a milk bottle into residual waste now owes the container a trip. Some stores discover they are taking back formats their backrooms hate. Some producers discover that exemption had been a quiet subsidy of convenience.
Barriers break in operations, not in headlines. Extra machine programs, extra staff wiping sour residue, extra arguments at the service desk when a bottle is eligible in law and illegible in plastic. Then the wound. What happens when packaging is not returned? The consumer simply does not get the money. There was no detective, there was no fine for a bin. The price signal fails in the smallest possible way, one unredeemed shell at a time.
That shell may be incinerated, sorted as ordinary waste, left in a forest, exported in a holiday suitcase, or stolen from a public bin by someone who will redeem it later. From the system's point of view, the important event is negative. No machine count, no refund, no clearing line for that unit. The deposit charged at sale does not complete its circuit back to a pair of hands. Who keeps the stranded cents is the argument the architecture cannot make pretty. High return rates mean the stranded pool is smaller than outsiders expect. It is not zero. Every unreturned unit is a tiny float that the original charging chain no longer owes to a redeemer. Environmental agencies can celebrate recovery percentages. Retailers can complain about foyer costs. Fillers can note that a deposit they charged has become, in the breach, something else. None of that requires a conspiracy word. It requires an open account that nobody closed. Idealism wanted a clean countryside and a taut citizen. Reality delivers machines, settlement files, shop-size exceptions, dairy residue, and a street harvest of abandoned coins. Ambition wanted one-way packaging to stop being a free dump.
Constraint remains. People still litter a fraction. Tourists still miss the rule. Reusable still fights one way on weight and habit. And the law still refuses to pretend that every bottle in Germany is the same object. The climax is a boring light on a machine. Accepted. The drum swallows a vessel that had been, minutes earlier, trash with a price. Somewhere, a clearing file will move 25 cents from a filler's world to a retailer's world. If the light had stayed red, the object would have gone on being only empty. The wound stays open because the system is powered by incompletion. If every shell came back, the drama would be accounting. Because some never do, the Republic keeps a shadow inventory of unpaid refunds and uncollected plastic, and nobody can point to a single villain who ordered that remainder.
The deeper invention is not a bottle, and not even a refund. It is a residual price that the state installs inside an object so that behavior changes without a policeman at every bin. Once consumption ends, ordinary products become worthless. Germany's one-way deposit refuses that ending for a defined class of shells. It manufactures a little market that begins where the thirst stops. That market conscripts firms. Manufacturers must mark and fund. Retailers must accept and count. A clearing operator must make strangers' machines add up. Shoppers are left free, which is the elegant cruelty of the design. Freedom here means you may throw the thing away, and the penalty is already in the price you paid. No lecture is required if the voucher is real. Economists like to say people respond to incentives. The sentence is cheap until you watch a stranger carry a dripping bag of PET across a car park because 25 cents times 20 is a bus ticket. Or until you watch a discounter spend floor space on a counting cathedral it never wanted because selling the drink legally means owning the empty. The price signal does not merely nag the consumer. It rebuilds the supply chain so that packaging remains a liability after the brand's photograph has done its work. There is a principle hiding in the distinction the statute will not let us blur. Single use is killed cleanly if it returns, counted, crushed, recycled as material. Reusable is kept alive if it returns washed, filled, sent out as the same citizen. Two kinds of afterlife, two kinds of hostage money. Confuse them and you get a morality play about Germany being green. Keep them apart and you see a more interesting tool. The law deciding how much of a product's life is allowed to be someone else's problem. Unreturned shells are the tool's confession. A price that outlives the drink still dies if nobody claims it. Litter becomes a forfeited refund. A street collector becomes an informal clearing agent the DPG did not hire. An industry float appears wherever the circuit fails. The system can be proud of high return and still be haunted by the remainder, because the remainder is where legally created value goes dark. Stand at the end
not in a parliament, but at the slot where an object is judged. The drink is a memory. The label is wet.
The machine either recognizes a claim or it does not. That flash of recognition is the whole philosophy. Waste is not an aesthetic category. It is a price that failed, or a price that got paid. How many other things in a rich economy would change shape if the law left money inside them after we thought we were done?